Good afternoon, everybody, and happy hump day. It's Wednesday, September 24th, 2025, and I've got all your top stories lined up for your rush hour ride home. We're diving into Jimmy Kimmel's record-breaking return, Howard Stern's take on it, plus the latest courtroom updates involving Justin Baldoni and Blake Lively. New information is pointing to Blake's assistant and even her makeup artist being next in line for deposition. A twist that could change everything. On top of that, we'll get into political headlines, including the Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein statue fiasco at the National Mall, and how the Trump administration threw shade at President Joe Biden with their new presidential photo gallery. Ridiculous, shocking, and a little surreal. These stories and more kick off right now on The Rush. First up, Jimmy Kimmel. His return to late-night TV wasn't just big, it shattered his own YouTube records. His opening monologue has already racked up over 14 million views, becoming the most watched Kimmel clip in history. Honestly, I was abroad when it aired, and I had to stand up while watching. It was that powerful. For those of us who believe in free speech and comedy as truth-telling, it was a perfect storm moment. People tried to silence him, but instead, it reignited his show and turned him into a symbol of resilience. Some critics are saying the ratings will fade again, but maybe this sparks a long-term revival. Fans called it historic, emotional, even Hall of Fame worthy for American broadcasting. Kimmel apologized for any confusion about sensitive topics, but stood firm that he wasn't mocking tragedy. He was speaking to power. That balance of compassion and defiance hit the right note, and even Howard Stern praised him, saying it was exactly what free speech is meant to look like. But this story isn't just about one comedian. It's about what happens when governments try to interfere with entertainment, media, and speech. If they can silence late-night shows, YouTube and podcasts could be next. This is a turning point. Democracy or dictatorship? Free voices or controlled narratives? Speaking of comedians, Theo Von had his own moment when Homeland Security used his clip in a tweet without permission. Theo clapped back, demanding they remove it, jokingly asking for a check, but making clear that his nuanced views on immigration were reduced to a cheap soundbite. It shows how comedy and politics keep colliding in unexpected ways. And while all that unfolds, the Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni legal battle continues heating up. Reports confirm that Blake's assistant and makeup artist are set to testify next, which could reveal shocking behind-the-scenes details. And then there's Brian Friedman, Justin Baldoni's high-profile attorney. Some are even creating websites to dig into who this guy really is, showing how intense and personal this courtroom war has become. So buckle up. Between Hollywood drama, free speech fights, political chaos, and legal bombshells, today's rush hour is packed. Brian Friedman wants to bury his past and hide his personal transgressions, presenting himself as though he were beyond reproach, a lawyer standing tall on a pedestal of righteousness. Yet those who have dealt with him, those who claim to have been victimized by him, say otherwise. To them, it is hypocrisy that he acts so self-righteous in a courtroom while his own history, murky, complicated, and filled with allegations, lingers like a shadow. This is the real Brian Friedman, they argue, a man who has spent years cultivating an image of power and influence while pushing away whispers of misconduct. Someone asked me recently, why should anyone care about Brian Friedman? He's just a lawyer. Isn't the real story about Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni? And in a sense, that question cuts to the heart of this saga, because for some, he is just another lawyer doing his job. But for others, particularly those who have crossed paths with him in the darker alleys of his career, he is more than that. He is a reminder of how deeply personal histories and reputations intertwine with the trials that make headlines. One individual, identifying themselves as a victim, stated plainly, "I am one of his many victims." Their words carry weight not just because of the accusation itself, but because of the context. Here we have a case already dripping with controversy. Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni, spiraling into endless subplots, side battles, and PR spin cycles. And now, into this already combustible mix, enters the figure of Baldoni's own lawyer, with critics drawing attention to his alleged past. It turns what could have been a straightforward Hollywood legal showdown into something far messier, far uglier, and far more fascinating. But here's where the story takes on an even sharper edge. Because while these accusations against Friedman are troubling, one must acknowledge the reality. He is still a practicing lawyer. He still holds his license in California. That means whatever has been whispered, alleged, or written about him in corners of the internet, it has not, at least not yet, risen to the level of disbarment. That's the line we must draw in the sand. The accusations alone are not what this trial is about. And if we let ourselves be consumed by the question of whether Baldoni's lawyer is morally pure, we risk losing sight of the main event, the battle between Baldoni and Blake Lively. That's the heart of this case. Still, it is impossible to ignore the broader hypocrisy. Lawyers, after all, are rarely saints. Many who have dealt with them will tell you sometimes they are sharks, sometimes they are manipulators, sometimes they are scummy, though of course not all. But when the argument devolves into, your side has bad morals, so my side must be right, it becomes a distraction. That's exactly what's happening here. Because if we look closely, Blake Lively's legal team has engaged in questionable tactics as well, allegedly creating fake court cases to sneak past privilege rules and subpoena documents that should have been protected. That's not clean, noble lawyering. That's playing dirty. So let's not kid ourselves. Both sides are knee-deep in mud, trying to paint the other darker than themselves. The real intrigue, though, lies in the upcoming depositions. Because while legal teams posture and PR machines spin, it is depositions, cold, recorded, and transcribed, that often reveal the most explosive truths. And in this case, the names being lined up for questioning could shift the entire narrative. Katie and Casey, covering this saga closely, broke down what's coming next, and their insight highlights just how juicy these developments may be. A flood of filings recently hit the Blake Lively vs. Wayfarer Studios docket, and tucked within them were revelations of sealed depositions, sealed contracts, and fierce pushback from Baldoni's side against Blake's request for punitive damages and attorney's fees. According to Wayfarer's lawyers, those requests were dead on arrival, overreaching, and destined to be denied. But the filings contained something far more explosive: the depositions of two key figures, Vivian Baker, Blake Lively's makeup artist, and Warren Zavala, Blake's talent agent at WME. Now, why do these names matter so much? Let's rewind to Blake Lively's second amended complaint, filed July 30th. In it, she laid out allegations that Justin Baldoni and his producing partner, Jaime Heath, intruded into her private trailer during moments of vulnerability. She described being topless, having body makeup removed, only to have Baldoni and Heath appear uninvited, insisting they needed to speak with her immediately. When she protested that she was nearly finished and preferred to meet clothed, Heath allegedly pressed, declaring that without granting them access then and there, no meeting would happen at all. She described the moment as humiliating, disturbing, and violating. According to Lively's account, she reluctantly agreed but asked Heath to keep his back turned. Yet she soon noticed him staring directly at her chest. When she called him out, he allegedly brushed it off, saying he simply preferred to look people in the eye when speaking. To Blake, her makeup artist, and others present, this was deeply unsettling. And this was only the second day of filming. On paper, the allegations paint Baldoni and Heath as predators invading her privacy. But as this case has unfolded, video evidence, contradictory statements, and inconsistencies in Lively's story have raised doubts. Has she stretched the truth? Bent the narrative? Even contorted details to cast herself as the victim? Many think so. Others believe her completely. But here's the key. The makeup artist could provide independent corroboration. This is where Vivian Baker comes in. Unlike Lively's husband, friends, or loyal fans, Baker is not beholden to Blake. She wasn't hired to defend her reputation. She was hired by the production itself. That means her loyalty is to the job, not to Lively. And if Baker, under oath, confirms Blake's story, that producers entered uninvited, that boundaries were crossed, that discomfort was real, then Baldoni's defense could take a catastrophic hit. But if Baker instead provides a different version, if she says the incident was exaggerated, or that Blake herself invited them in, or that nothing inappropriate occurred, then Blake's credibility could collapse entirely. And why would Baldoni's team submit the deposition of Blake's own makeup artist if it hurt their case? Legal teams don't hand over testimony that damages their position unless compelled. The fact that Baldoni's lawyers uploaded Baker's deposition suggests it bolsters their side. That is a signal worth paying attention to. It hints that Baker's words may undermine Lively's narrative and reinforce Baldoni's. Now let's talk about the topless accusation itself. Lively claimed she was topless, exposed, having makeup removed. But internet sleuths unearthed an image from her own Instagram, shared openly with 40 million followers, showing her in a similar state, partially unclothed while makeup was applied. If she felt that vulnerable, why share it so publicly? Critics point to this contradiction, arguing that Lively plays fast and loose with what she calls privacy, and that again cuts into her credibility. But defenders counter consent is the difference. Posting an image she chose on her terms is not the same as men barging into her space without permission. That's the crux of the legal battle, consent. Did she invite them in? Did she refuse only to have them enter anyway? And did her one-time invitation, in a casual text message saying, "I'm just pumping in my trailer, you can come work" lines if you want, constitute blanket permission for them to enter at will in future? Blake says absolutely not. Baldoni's side says otherwise. This is why the makeup artist's testimony matters so profoundly. If Baker says Blake refused consent and Baldoni entered anyway, that's damning. If she says Blake gave consent or seemed comfortable, that's exonerating. There is little gray area. And remember, Vivian Baker is not part of Blake's inner circle. She is a professional with no incentive to lie. Which side her testimony supports could tilt the entire case. Meanwhile, the filings also mention Warren Zavala, Blake's WME agent. His testimony could illuminate whether Blake confided concerns to her team at the time. Because one of the biggest red flags here is the absence of contemporaneous evidence. If Blake truly felt violated, why aren't there texts to her agent, to her assistant, to her SAG rep, to her husband Ryan Reynolds, to anyone? Why are we only hearing about it in lawsuits long after the fact? Zavala's deposition could answer that. Did she call him in tears? Did she express outrage? Or was there silence until lawyers got involved? The second amended complaint escalates matters further. Lively claims Baldoni and Heath invaded her privacy not only during makeup, but also while she was breastfeeding her infant. She paints a picture of producers disregarding boundaries, violating her space during intimate, vulnerable moments, and showing what she calls a shocking lack of respect. And again, the hypocrisy angle looms large. Baldoni has spent years publicly preaching about consent, respect, and male accountability. If these allegations are true, they expose breathtaking hypocrisy. But the problem for Lively is evidence, or lack thereof. Baldoni's team points to texts where she invited them in, to the absence of complaints at the time, and now, perhaps, to depositions from her own team that contradict her. This is why these next depositions matter so much. They are not fluff. They are not sideshows. They go to the heart of credibility. What we're seeing unfold right now is nothing short of extraordinary. On the surface, this is a Hollywood courtroom battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. But once you peel back even a single layer, you discover a mess of contradictions, hypocrisy, and side scandals that stretch from lawyers like Brian Friedman to sealed depositions, political maneuverings, and even a parallel storm surrounding Jeffrey Epstein's files, bribery accusations in government, and media controversies that speak to how power, influence, and control operate in today's society. To really understand what's happening, we have to start at the center, the courtroom fight between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. It sounds simple, actor versus actor, celebrity versus celebrity, but this case has turned into something much larger. It's not just about two stars clashing over a production. It's about how narratives are shaped, how reputations are destroyed, how careers are threatened, and how the public is pulled into believing one version of a story while the truth may be hiding in plain sight. Now let's talk about Brian Friedman. For those unfamiliar, Friedman is a well-known entertainment lawyer in California. On the surface, he's just another name in a long list of attorneys who've represented big stars. But here, his past and his reputation are suddenly under the microscope. Critics have pointed out that Friedman himself has faced allegations of misconduct, hypocrisy, and personal controversies. His detractors say he tries to bury his past and act holier than thou, when in reality, he's no different from many other powerful figures who bend rules when convenient. That's where the hypocrisy comes in. How can someone act self-righteous in a courtroom when their own record isn't spotless? Still, there's another perspective here. If Friedman is still practicing law, if he's still licensed by the California bar, then legally whatever accusations once surrounded him either didn't stick, didn't meet the burden of proof, or weren't enough to end his career. That's the reality of the legal world. Lawyers are not saints. Some are brilliant, some are sleazy, many are both at the same time. What matters in this courtroom isn't Friedman's morality. It's whether Blake Lively and her team can prove their claims, or whether Justin Baldoni's side can dismantle them piece by piece. That's the game. And right now, that game has escalated dramatically with depositions. Sealed contracts, sealed testimony, declarations from makeup artists and talent agents. This isn't gossip anymore. It's evidence. Blake Lively claims that Baldoni and his producing partner Jaime Heath crossed major boundaries on set, barging into her trailer while she was topless, while she was breastfeeding, and while she expected privacy. She paints a picture of men ignoring consent, dismissing her boundaries, and exploiting their power as producers. If you take her words at face value, it's disturbing, shocking, and indefensible. But as with every Hollywood courtroom fight, there are other versions of the story. Baldoni's team insists that Blake has stretched, bent, and even twisted the truth. They point to evidence, screenshots, and context that seem to undercut her narrative. For example, the infamous text message in which Blake herself appears to invite Baldoni into her trailer while she was pumping. Was that a blanket invitation? Was it limited to a specific moment? Did she later revoke consent? These are the key questions. And when it comes down to he said, she said battles, depositions from third parties like makeup artists, assistants, and agents suddenly become the most important voices in the room. Because unlike the stars, these witnesses don't have the same career stakes. They're supposed to tell the truth as they experienced it. Now this is where it gets fascinating. The fact that Baldoni's lawyers are pushing to release the deposition of Blake's makeup artist tells us something. If the makeup artist backed up Blake's story, Baldoni's side would want to bury it, seal it, or fight to keep it private. Instead, they're highlighting it. That strongly suggests the deposition doesn't favor Blake. It may even contradict her claims. And if that's true, the makeup artist could be the turning point in this entire case. Imagine the power of someone who was literally inches away from Blake during the alleged incident saying, "No, that's not how it happened." That would be devastating for her credibility. But let's zoom out for a moment. Why does this matter beyond the Hollywood bubble? Because this case is about more than just Lively versus Baldoni. It's about the broader cultural conversation around power, consent, and accountability. Hollywood has been through a reckoning before. The Me Too movement exposed countless abuses. And now, every new allegation, every lawsuit is filtered through that lens. People want to believe women, but people also don't want to be misled. If Blake is telling the truth, she deserves justice. If she's exaggerating or manipulating events, then she's weaponizing a very serious issue for personal gain. That's why this case has captured so much attention. It's not just about two stars. It's about trust. But the circus doesn't stop there. Alongside this main event, we've seen a flood of side stories. Let's talk about Epstein. Just as this Hollywood scandal is unfolding, political news hit like a thunderbolt. Democrats secured the final seat they needed to force a vote on releasing the Epstein files. Let that sink in. For years, people have speculated about the Epstein documents, who was involved, who visited the island, who benefited from his network of exploitation. And now there's a real chance the files will be made public. If that happens, it could shake politics, business, and entertainment all at once. And when you consider how many of these worlds are interconnected, you start to see why power players might want distractions. Cases like Lively versus Baldoni can dominate headlines, while even bigger scandals unfold quietly in the background. And then we have the strange, almost absurd stories that pop up in the midst of all this, like the statue of Trump and Epstein holding hands in DC, a guerrilla art piece that appeared overnight, was photographed, and then quickly removed by the National Park Service because, of course, it didn't have a permit. But the image was already out there, shared across social media, sparking conversations about symbolism, accountability, and irony. Whether you saw it as satire, protest, or smear, the statue did its job. It reminded everyone of the connection that people keep trying to forget. Meanwhile, on another front, we've got bribery allegations rocking government officials. MSNBC reported that a high-ranking border official allegedly accepted a $50,000 bribe. The official denied wrongdoing, claimed decades of service, and insisted he'd recused himself from contracts. But here's the kicker, he never outright denied taking the money. And MSNBC claims the FBI has a video of him accepting it. Think about that. While one corner of the country obsesses over celebrity scandals, another corner is grappling with corruption at the highest levels of power. And still, the circus rolls on. We see Joe Biden being mocked with an auto-penned photo on the Presidential Walk of Fame, an image that symbolized absence more than presence. We see Trump dunking on Biden despite his health struggles, a reminder of how politics has become theater as much as governance. And then there's ESPN and the Colin Kaepernick documentary that mysteriously disappeared. Spike Lee was supposed to direct it, Kaepernick was supposed to tell his side of the story, but suddenly the project was shelved. ESPN insists it was creative differences, not political pressure. But many aren't buying it. They see it as another example of corporate America bending to power, silencing voices, and erasing uncomfortable truths. So what do we make of all this? On one level, these are separate stories. Hollywood lawsuits, political scandals, media manipulation. But if you step back, you start to see a pattern. It's all about control. Control of narratives, control of evidence, control of who gets to speak and who gets silenced. Blake Lively wants to control her image as a victim fighting back. Baldoni wants to control his image as a falsely accused advocate of consent. Politicians want to control which files see the light of day. Networks want to control which documentaries reach the public. And in every case, the truth is trapped somewhere in the middle, fighting to break through the spin. As viewers, readers, and citizens, we're left in a strange position. We crave the truth, but we're bombarded with performances, distractions, and half-stories. The Blake Lively case is a perfect microcosm of this. On the surface, it's tabloid fodder. Underneath, it's a reflection of the deeper battles over power, consent, and credibility. And the only way to cut through it is to keep asking questions, to keep demanding evidence, and to refuse to accept easy answers. Because at the end of the day, what we're really watching is not just a trial, it's a test. A test of whether Hollywood, politics, and media can still be held accountable in a world where spin often outweighs substance. A test of whether truth can survive in an age of weaponized narratives. And maybe, just maybe, a test of whether the public has the patience to see through the noise and find clarity. So buckle up, because if the last few weeks are any indication, this story is only going to get messier, louder, and more revealing. The depositions are coming. The files may be released. The scandals will keep multiplying. And through it all, we'll be here, watching closely, cutting through the noise, and asking the questions that need to be asked.